from the blue, and it's not just Fine Gael and Labour that have difficulties on this issue. I think for Fianna Fáil it's going to be very tricky as well. And the Kenny has been pretty much straight down the middle. We're doing it. It's going to happen. If we lose people, so be it. Micheál Martin hasn't been quite as categoric.
You don't have to.
Well, I mean, they've a parliamentary party of 19. They can ill afford to start losing some of those 19. And the way it's shaping up at the moment, that could potentially happen. So it could be every bit as serious for Fianna Fáil as it is for the government. But I think everybody wants to get this issue done and dusted as quickly as possible.
Okay. All right. Shane Coleman, News Talk's political editor, thank you very much for joining us and talking us through those stories. Let's go through some of the day's other news. Justice Minister Alan Shatter is going to put plans in place to give him power to shut down the mobile phone network right across the country if necessary to deal with a terrorist bomb threat. Alan Shatter is rushing the measures through the Dáil in the new criminal justice bill. They've been put in place ahead of that G8 summit in Northern Ireland next month, just in case bombs could be set off by mobile phones. Alan Shatter saying that while rare, the possibility of a complete mobile shutdown will be in place.
It would be very unusual for it to be in the entire country. Theoretically, if the entire country was under threat, theoretically the answer is that would be possible. The reality is, happened in Boston is that there may be an area identified in respect of where it's believed there is a threat. So it would be highly unlikely that the entire country, it could apply to the entire country, but there are circumstances in which it could.
You want, in a crisis, in a major crisis, if everyone's mobile phone stopped working, what effect would that have on the national psyche if they couldn't get through to people? I'm sure that would cause a lot of distress. So it is a power, if it is used, would have to be used very sparingly and very carefully. Dublin's premier shopping street, we're told, is to receive a facelift. Work on the revamp of Grafton Street begins next month, with the St Stephen's Green end the first to see new granite paving from the Dublin mountains, no less, replacing the rather grubby looking red brickwork. The project is going to cost €4 million. It's going to be finished by November 2014, and city planner Dick Gleeson describes how the street's going to look once it's finished.
It will involve a grey granite in the centre, then a sort of a richer granite with red tone on the side areas here. You see this traditional street furniture is very dated and reached the end of its shelf life, so we have a new design for street furniture involving lighting, bollards and litter bins, and that protects the old basement areas from the central area.
We talked a lot about obesity on the programme last week. Leading health experts today say it's costing the Irish economy over €1 billion a year. Data is being examined at a conference of the Royal College of Physicians in Ireland. Dr. Anne Dee is a public health specialist. She says the obesity issue is having a significant impact on the taxpayer.
We have two types. The indirect costs are larger than the direct costs, and they make up about $750 million. The remainder are direct healthcare costs, and they make up about 3% of our total healthcare spend, which is what other countries have roughly found as well. Other European countries would be about that as well, but it is a large and growing proportion of the healthcare budget.
I don't want you to look at your lunch in a different way, but over 60% of us are now overweight or obese, according to the figures. An issue delegates to that conference say is causing a number of diseases, including diabetes, heart disease and multiple types of cancer. The second day of the inquest is underway into the deaths of 5 fishermen during the sinking of the T-Bonon in January of 2012. Barry Roach is the Southern correspondent with the Irish Times. He's been at the inquest and is on the line. Barry, good afternoon to you. Very difficult for the families to have to listen to this evidence. What have they been hearing today?
Good afternoon, Jonathan. Well, the families today heard firstly from Dr. Margaret Bolster. She's the assistant state pathologist, and she gave evidence of the post-mortem she conducted on 4 of the remains, and we heard that one of the men, Tish, and one of the Egyptians, he died from blunt force trauma, and she said that was consistent with him being thrown about within the wheelhouse in the boat and then later on rocks. The other 3 men she carried out post-mortems on, Michael Hayes, Kevin Kershaw, and Wael Mohammed.
Talks about how an overcomplicated US tax code has allowed the principle of no double taxation to degenerate into one of double no taxation. Isn't that the real problem?
It's one of the problems, yeah. Almost every country has problems with its tax system. They probably always will do. But you have companies like Apple, like Microsoft, and so many others that are operating in Ireland that take every advantage they can, that take those lax rules to the limit. There'll always be problems with the laws. So I don't think that's an excuse, because you will never get to a system where the laws are foolproof, even in countries that don't want to be tax havens.
back away from the very useful arrangements it's made and has implemented with international business, the international technology companies, for example, if other countries don't do something else in step?
Well, I think there is some force in that argument. There does need to be a concerted international effort, certainly at the level of the European Union. I mean, the reason that Ireland and increasingly the UK is such a dangerous tax haven is because it's not a remote palm-fringed island somewhere. It's in the heart of the European Union. It therefore benefits from all the economic freedoms that come with it, and companies can get their money in and out of Ireland tax-free. And that's so effectively they're a member of the economic club, and at the same time they're pilfering money from the kitty of that club. So you do need the European rules to be changed, and that's why the EU finance ministers really should be looking in their own backyard. They should be saying, what do we need to do to change the system so that Ireland, Netherlands, Luxembourg, increasingly the UK can't take advantage as they're setting out to do.
Brian Keegan?
Yeah, I wouldn't like to share that negativity. I mean, I do agree that there are some things that need to be fixed. We're dealing, in the case of the US, with rules which came from the Kennedy era. In another high-profile case at the moment, the UK, only last week, we saw a situation where Google was actually using a UK-originated rule from over 100 years ago. So there's certainly plenty of scope for improvement. Where I'd also disagree is that it's not appropriate for any country or any group of countries to act unilaterally. We see within the European Union, and we saw even from last week at the ECOFIN ministers meeting, how difficult it was to achieve consensus on relatively straightforward procedures. What there has to be is a shift from the emphasis that currently exists on favouring countries that export investment and rebalance it towards countries that receive investment, the likes of Ireland. If there's an international willingness to make that kind of sea change, I think there can be and will be good and efficient reform. At the moment, it is up to each individual country to play by the rules as best it can, to be transparent and to be effective, and that's what Ireland does.
A quick question to both of you. This idea that has been put forward in a European Parliament resolution calling for a halving by 2020 of the loss, which they estimate is there, to EU states of €1 trillion annually. Is it a realistic one, Brian Keegan?
It's realistic, but let's be absolutely clear. We've been talking about avoidance in this debate. They're talking about evasion. They're talking about non-disclosure of funds. There's certainly a lot of measures that can be taken. For example, better cooperation between revenue authorities in the different EU member states to clamp down on tax evasion. And tax evasion is in nobody's interest because businesses that don't pay their taxes compete unfairly, and we don't want to see that happen.
Richard Brooks, last word.
Yeah, they can do something on that. They can demand much more information on who owns assets. That's on tax evasion, but on tax avoidance, they need to bang a few heads together within Europe and stop countries adopting beggar-thy-neighbour policies.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you both. Richard Brooks, author of The Great Tax Robbery, subtitle How Britain Became a Tax Haven for Fat Cats, and also Brian Keegan here in Dublin, tax director with Accountancy Ireland. Moving now back to the Dáil. If the Minister for Justice, Alan Shatter, had thought the McWallace affair was over and done with after his statement in the Chamber last night, he was mistaken.